Good morning. Happy Friday. Welcome to my kitchen. And as usual, I have my babies who need their morning treat before we get started. So let me go ahead and get them their treat. This is Ryder and Lily. So, I'm going to be doing a few things this morning, and I thought I'd bring you along. And yes, I'm still in my PJs. It's cool, very cold here this morning in Ohio. So let me get my hands washed. I'm sorry, you're probably going to hear my coffee pot. It's almost finished. So, I'm going to get my hands washed, and then we'll get started. I'm going to make a homemade pizza this morning. It can be either used as a pan pizza or a thick crust pizza made with homemade dough. And I'm making my dough over here this morning in my bread machine. And it has about 11 minutes. So when it goes off, I'll go ahead and take the dough out and we'll start on the pizza. And then I'm making a breakfast casserole, and I'm going to make a strawberry pie for dessert. So I'll have homemade pizza for dinner, and then hubby wants a homemade strawberry pie. There, my coffee pot has finished, so let me wash my hands and we'll get started. So happy Friday, everybody. It's the end of the week. And I'm still working on my pantry stock up. And this is part of my monthly pantry stock up. I go in and see, what I have. And I know if I make a pizza, it's going to have a thick crust. It's going to be a very large pizza. So my husband and I only eat half of the pizza for one meal. And then I'll put the other half in my for a future freezer meal. Hi, good morning. How are you this morning, Rosewood? Welcome to my kitchen. We're going to make a pizza this morning, a homemade pizza. I am making my pizza dough in my bread machine. And I'll explain to you what all I did making the pizza dough. I'm going to be making a breakfast casserole and a strawberry pie for dessert. So I'll take you over to the bread maker. And this is my bread maker. And it has multiple functions. So what I'm using today is the dough. And this is just making my dough. This is not baking the bread. So I use this same dough setting whenever I'm making my homemade sandwich bread dough, or the same dough I'm using for the pizza crust, I make for homemade sandwiches, sandwich bread, cinnamon raisin bread, hot rolls, dinner rolls, cinnamon rolls. So I absolutely love this dough recipe, and I just put it in my bread machine and allow it to do the dough part. It'll go through first rise, second rise, and third rise, but it will not start to bake. So when that beeps, it'll tell me to remove the paddles, or remove the paddle. So when it does that, I'll go over and remove the paddle, take the dough out, and remove the paddle from the dough, and then I'll give you over to the workspace. You are so pretty. Oh, well, thank you. Granny in her pajamas this morning. It's cold here in Ohio, so it's early. I'm still in my pajamas. So this has about 8 minutes. So in the meantime, what I did to get started and speed things up, because it's a live stream, I'll go ahead and turn this light off. I went ahead and browned 1 pound of sausage. This is from my breakfast casserole, and it's just 1 pound sausage. And I've got it browned. I didn't want to over brown it because I'm going to be baking this in the oven as a casserole. So I just have it browned to save a little bit of time and speed up the process. So I'll be putting my breakfast casserole together after I get my pizza put together. And then we will be starting on a strawberry pie. Hopefully I'm not moving too much. So good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. We made it through another week. And I've had a pretty busy week. Doing freezer stock up. If you've been following me this week, I started off with making the homemade fettuccine pasta using the pasta Evian pasta maker. And then I allowed it to set out on cookie sheets lined in aluminum foil for 48 hours or a little more until I knew it was good and dry. And then I made 4 pounds, so I got 2-gallon jars of homemade fettuccine pasta. So that was the first pantry stock up that I did for the beginning of the month. And then I also, what else did I do? I canned pork, part 1 and part 2, using the electric Nesco Smart Canner. So that part 1 and part 2. And I'm sorry, I have puppies. You'll hear them in the background. And then I've done some cooking and some baking. Now, when I'm putting my casserole together, I showed you the brown... No, puppies. I showed you the brown sausage. And earlier this week, I was using, in one of my meals, some of my potatoes. And what I'll do to speed things up for myself is I'll get my crock pot out, wash some potatoes. Hi, good morning. And I will put them in my crock pot and let them steam on high all day. And then I'll let them cool. I'll cube them up and put them in quart bags and put them in the freezer for a future meal. So I used 1 quart earlier this week in one of my baking videos, live stream. So today I'm going to be using the second one. Wow, you are really good at cooking. Oh, well, thank you. So this is going to be part of my breakfast casserole. I'll be using my potatoes that I prepared ahead of time and had in my freezer. So as I'm doing my pantry restock every month, I'm also doing a freezer rotation. So I took my 2 quarts out, so I'll now be making some more potatoes and putting them back in. That way I know I'm constantly rotating my freezer and using everything in my freezer. And it's only myself and my husband, so we have a small family. So this is very, very convenient for myself and my family. So I'm going to be using my potatoes that I allowed to thaw, and they're ready for the breakfast casserole. I've got my brown sausage. I've ahead of time chunked up some onions. I'll do that and then freeze them. And then when I'm making a meal like this morning, or any meal that I need, I can just go ahead and get out my onions. That way none of my onions are spoiling. Nice, I love this. There's 15 people here, and we're all supporting you. Oh, thank you. I wish I was fit like you. Oh, I'm a grandma and a great-grandma, and I'm in my jammies today. So this is Granny in her jammies. So I'll be using the brown sausage, the 1 quart of the potatoes, and they were steamed, cubed, and then frozen. I'll let them thaw for the meal. I'll be using some of my diced frozen onions. I did 1 pound of the ground sausage. I'll be using some shredded cheddar cheese. And I'll be using 6 eggs. And we're going to be making the pizza. I've got my pizza dough going over here in my bread maker, and I have about 2 minutes. So whenever that beeps, we'll go ahead and get that out and get started on the pizza and get it put together. And then I'll get this started in the casserole dish, and we'll make the breakfast casserole. And then I'm going to be making a strawberry pie. So I had some frozen strawberries and I've allowed them to thaw. So this is going to be dessert. I'll be having the pizza for dinner, and then we'll have the strawberry pie for dessert. And I'm making the breakfast casserole for my freezer stock up, for my monthly freezer stock up. So I'll be using some frozen strawberries that I've allowed to thaw. I'll be using 1 6-ounce package of strawberry jello. And I'll be using 1 pie crust, graham cracker pie crust. So I'll be making my own filling and making the strawberry pie. And that'll be dessert. So right now I'm just waiting 1 more minute for my pizza dough to get done. We'll start with it. And then we'll move from the pizza to the breakfast casserole and then put a homemade strawberry pie together for dessert. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. And I thought I'd just bring you along and let you see how I make my pizza. Now this, I was explaining earlier, I'm just using my bread machine. I've got it set on the dough sitting, and it'll just go through first rise, second rise, and third rise, but it will not start baking. So when it beeps and tells, which it just beeped, so I'm going to unplug my machine. And here is my pizza dough that I'm going to be using. So it has not baked, it just went through the dough, making the dough process. So now I'm going to remove this and take the paddle off. So I'm going to move you over. To my workspace. And I'm limited on my workspace, so I'll do the best I can here. I'll get you down where you can see what I'm doing. Now, when I make this particular dough, I absolutely love this dough. I use it for my sandwich bread. I was showing that yesterday, I believe, on the live stream. And it makes absolutely beautiful sandwich bread. And this is a dough recipe that I have seen and picked up somewhere and then just kept adding and taking away until I found the exact recipe I like. So here is the homemade bread, the white sandwich bread, and it is so soft and it's absolutely amazing. Hopefully you can see that okay. So I make the sandwich bread. I make cinnamon raisin bread with the same dough. I make my cinnamon rolls. Hi, good morning, Kelly. How are you this morning? Welcome to my kitchen. And then it also makes wonderful dinner rolls. I think I showed those yesterday. It makes absolutely beautiful dinner rolls, which we had some of our dinner rolls with the homemade pork stew that I made yesterday using my canned pork. That was my part 1 and part 2 of canning pork with the electric canner. So, and this also makes wonderful cinnamon rolls. So I use the same dough for multiple things. Getting granddaughter up and ready for school. Okay, thank you, Kelly. So my dough machine made my dough for me. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and take it out. I let it go till it said remove the paddle. And this makes an absolutely wonderful dough. It's an all-purpose dough. I absolutely love it. So here's my paddle. And I removed it from my dough. Now I'm going to go ahead and put this back in, and I'm just going to let my dough sit here for a second. Now I'll put my paddle back in my container, and I'm just going to let this dough set. You can see how flexible. It's a very, very nice dough. So I'm just going to let that set. It's still warm. It comes out a little warm from where it went through rise 1, rise 2, and rise 3. But the bread machine is not baking. So while I have my bread machine set up, I'll go ahead and start a second batch of dough. And you can actually wrap this in plastic, let this cool, and freeze it for another time to make a loaf of bread, to make cinnamon rolls, to make dinner rolls. Just take it out of your freezer and let it thaw, and you've got another freezer stock up, and you've made it's your it's your own dough. You've used your own ingredients. You know there's no artificial ingredients in this. So I'm going to go ahead and let this set for just a minute, and I'm going to go ahead and put together another batch of the dough, and I'll show you my recipe. Let me go around and get my flour. And this is the bread machine that I'm using. And I'm using the dough setting to make the dough. So I'm going to go ahead and keep you here where you can see my little pot. And as you can see, I have my handy dandy fancy little recipe. So I'm going to go ahead and put another batch of dough together. And this is so simple and so easy, and it's all natural. You don't have any artificial ingredients. And it says to start off with 1 cup of hot water between 105 and 110 degrees Celsius. So I just put my water in the microwave for about 30 seconds. I don't want it real hot. So I have 1 8-ounce cup of water. And I'm going to put that in my microwave for 30 seconds. And then it calls for 3 tablespoons of melted butter or oil. Now, you can use vegetable oil or you can use olive oil. This morning, this batch, I used vegetable oil, so I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing and do a repeat. Using vegetable oil. Okay, I have my 1 cup of water that was in the microwave for 30 seconds. I'm going to add that to my bread pan. Now I need 3 tablespoons of the melted butter or vegetable oil or any type of oil. So I'm going to use the vegetable oil. That's what I use for this dough that I just took out of the bread machine. And I'm going to put 3 tablespoons of oil. Sorry, I have puppies and you're probably going to hear them in the background. I apologize. We're real life here. And this is so simple and easy. And I need 2 tablespoons of sugar or honey. So you can use granulated sugar, you can use honey. I used sugar this morning, so I'm going to go ahead and use sugar because I want to make this exactly like you're seeing here. So I need 2 tablespoons of sugar, and this is just regular granulated sugar. No, babies. No. All done. No. And then I need 3.5, it calls for 3.5 cups of all-purpose flour. Now remember, when you're making dough or bread, your humidity is very important. Sometimes you can do the exact same ingredients and your dough may be a little bit dry or it may be a little bit moist. So it depends on your humidity. So it does call for 3.5 cups of all-purpose flour. However, I'm not going to put the complete half cup in there because of my humidity here. And I like the way this dough turned out. So 3.5, or 3, we'll put 3 cups. And I'm not packing my flour. I want it to be loose. So there's 3. And then I'm only going to use about this much additional. Now, once this starts, I'll check it. And if I think it needs a little bit more flour, if my dough looks a little too sticky and it's sticking to my sides, it's not coming off, I'll go ahead and add just a little bit more flour. If it looks too dry, I'll add just a little tiny bit more water. Okay. So now I'm just going to take my finger and just kind of smooth everything out to where it's nice and even, covering all my liquid. And I need 1 teaspoon of salt. So I'm going to use my half teaspoon. So this will be 2. So there's 1/2. And I put my salt to the outside of my bowl. And that's just regular granulated table salt. Now I'm going to take my finger and I'm going to make a little well, a little hole in the center of my pan. I don't know if you can see that or not. It's just a little indentation. Just take my finger and make a small indentation. And I'm using my bread machine yeast. And it calls for 2 teaspoons of yeast. Now, you don't have to have the bread machine yeast. You can use regular yeast like you would for making bread. I just have this available, so I'm going to go ahead and use it. And I need 2 teaspoons make sure I got a teaspoon there. 2 teaspoons of yeast. And I'm just going to set that right in that little well that I made. So hopefully you can see that okay. And then I'm going to go over and start my bread machine. I'll take you with me. So I'm just going to set my pan down in, turn it, make sure it's locked. I'm going to close my lid, plug in my machine. And then I'm going to select Hopefully you can see that. Here on the top, it has numbers 1 through 12. I'm going to select number 8, which is dough. So I'll go to my program. You can see 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and that it's an hour and a half. And I'm going to push start. And I'm going to allow this just to make the dough for me. And that will take an hour and a half. So that way I'll have my second batch of dough. What am I making? I'm making a homemade pizza today. And I'm making a breakfast casserole today. And I'm also making a strawberry pie for dessert. So I'm going to go ahead and wash my hands here. And I'm going to move my flour container off to the side in case I need it. And I'm going to go over there and check that here in just a little bit to see if it's the right consistency that I'm wanting for my dough. Again, it depends on your humidity. I'm going to add just a wee bit more water, maybe about a tablespoon. And the more that you do this, the more you'll know the consistency that you like. Whenever your dough is in the machine, let me bring you back over. Sorry if I'm moving too fast. You don't want your dough to be too wet or too dry. You want it to not be sticking to the outside. Whenever you look in the bottom, you want to make sure that the dough's mixing well. And then you want a consistency where it's kind of sticky, but not too sticky. So that's the consistency I'm looking for in my dough. So I'm just going to let that continue to make the dough. And then that'll be another batch of dough that I can put in the freezer and have it for to make a loaf of homemade bread, or rolls, or another pizza. Just wrap it in a plastic, put it in a freezer bag, and let it freeze. And whenever I want to use it, I'll bring it out and thaw it, and let it thaw natural, and I'll have my next batch of dough. So I'm going to move you now back over to the workspace. Sorry, I'm limited on my views here. So I'm going to go ahead and move a few things over. Give myself a little bit more room. And this is the bread dough, my handy dandy bread dough recipe written down on a piece of paper. And that was 1 cup of water. And I heated it between 105 and 110. So 1 8-ounce cup of water in the microwave for 30 seconds. Then 3 tablespoons of melted butter or oil, either olive oil or whatever oil of your choice. Today I used vegetable oil. 2 tablespoons of sugar or honey. 3.5 cups of all-purpose flour. Start with 3 cups. And not quite 3.5 cups, maybe 3 1/4, 3 1/3 cup. And then check, because of your humidity, you may want to add the extra flour or you may not need it. 1 teaspoon of salt, and that's table salt, granulated salt. 2 teaspoons of yeast of any kind. So that is my recipe. And then I'll put it in my bread machine, set it on the dough, and allow it to go through the dough process until it beeps and tells me to remove my paddles. And then I'll go in and remove my paddle and remove my dough. Now here is the pizza dough, and you can see how nice that is. The bread machine did not bake my dough. It let it go through rise 1 and rise 2. So now I'm going to go ahead and get my pizza put together, and you can see what an absolutely wonderful dough that is. I mean, it is just amazing. It's not too sticky. It's not too dry. I absolutely love doing my bread this way, because when you get older like myself, your hands just don't work like they used to. So having the bread machine is amazing. If you don't have a bread machine, you can do this by hand and just allow it to raise on your counter and then make your pizza. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on this pizza. I'm going to preheat my oven to 350 degrees. And I'm just going to be using a pizza pan this morning. I've also made this pizza in my cast iron pan, and it makes a deep dish pan pizza. This dough is just so nice. And then when I'm using it to bake bread, whether it's the white sandwich bread or the raisin bread, cinnamon raisin bread, I like to use the cast iron skillets, and it's already went through rise 1, 2, and 3. I'll just shape my dough and form my dough for my loaf, and then I will make sure that my cast iron pan is well greased, and I'll put my dough in and just set it on the counter. Good morning, how are you this morning? Welcome to my kitchen. And I'll allow it to raise, and it'll raise about this much above my pan, and I'll put it in the oven at 350 degrees and bake the bread. I absolutely love my cast iron. Okay, so let's go ahead and get this homemade pizza put together. So I've made my own dough, and it is quite a large batch of dough. I let it set for just a few minutes, so it makes it easier for me to work with and to stretch my dough. And I want to try and just form this out to my pizza pan. So I'm just going to kind of slowly work it. I don't want to tear it, but I know there's plenty of dough here, so I'm just going to stretch my dough out. And I'm just going to keep working my dough and forming my dough until I can get it completely around my pizza pan. And it will fill the pan, trust me, it's a lot of dough. And my old hands just don't work like they used to, so please be patient. It takes me just a little bit to do things, but I get it done. Go ahead and turn it over. And just keep stretching and playing with the pizza dough until you get it where you want it. And again, you don't want to tear your dough. And you can hear my bread machine going in the background over there. Now I'm just going to keep working this out until I can get this completely covering my pizza pan. And I preheated my oven to 350 degrees. Is what I'm preheating to. Now if you have young hands, you can probably do this a lot faster than I can. And I want to continue to stretch my dough. And I'm moving it from the inside and pushing outward. Now, is my crust perfect? No, I'm not a perfect chef. I'm just an old-fashioned grandma that loves to cook and bake. And hubby said he would like to have a homemade pizza for dinner. And he wanted a strawberry pie for dessert. So that's what we are doing today. As you can see, that's a lot of dough. It's going to be a very thick pan pizza. And we'll continue to stretch it outward. And I did not grease this pizza pan. This is just a non-stick pizza pan. And I'm going to kind of take it toward the end so it'll kind of grip a little better for me. As you can see, that's starting to spread very nice. And this makes a really nice, thick, soft pizza crust. I don't like a thin pizza crust, and I like a very soft pizza crust. And this makes an absolutely beautiful pizza crust. I'm trying to shove to the edge now to form me a crust. I'm just using the edge of my hand. And again, I want to continue to push it outward. So I'll make sure it's completely covering my pan. And I'll go around again and push out to make me a nice crust. And you can see what I'm doing there. I'm just using my outer part of my hand and just pushing it up against the edge. And that's helping to form a nice crust. Now I'm going to take a fork and I'm going to poke some air holes in this because I'm going to put this in the oven for a few minutes once that preheats to 350. And I'm just going to allow this to raise a little bit more in the oven. And while that's doing that, I'll get my pizza sauce put together. Now, if you wanted a stuffed crust at this point, you could make a stuffed crust. You could go through and put your cheese in, fold your dough over, pinch it around the edges, and push it back and make yourself a stuffed crust. So here's my pizza crust. I'm just waiting for my oven to get to the 350 degrees. And then I'll put this in the oven and just allow it to raise a little bit. And while it's doing that, I'm going to make my own pizza sauce. So another thing I like to do is I have a little bit of olive oil. And this is just virgin olive oil. And before I put this in the oven, I'm just going to kind of spray just a little bit. This helps to brown your crust so nice. And then I'm going to take a brush. And I'm just going to kind of brush that olive oil around. And I'm going to put a little bit on my brush. And I'm just going to go around my crust. This makes such a pretty crust. And this is the homemade pizza dough if you're just coming in. And I'm making it in my bread machine on the dough cycle. Okay, I'm just going to make sure I've got everything coated and put a nice coat of olive oil before I put it in my oven. Hopefully you can see that. You can see the olive oil. And this makes an absolutely delicious pizza. Hi, good morning. Welcome to my kitchen. My oven is at 325 degrees, so I'm going to give it just a few minutes, and I'm just going to let my pizza dough set here. And is it absolutely perfect? No, it is not. So I'm going to wash my hands. I'll be right back. And this is part of my monthly pantry and freezer stock up. I make a lot of my own freezer meals for future meals. And they're made mostly by most of them from scratch. Looks just fine to me. Oh, well, thank you. Now my oven has preheated to 350. So I'm going to put this in the oven for just a few minutes, just to let it rise a little bit more. Even though it was in the bread machine on the dough cycle, it went through rise 1, 2, and 3. And then beeped and told me to remove the paddle, which I did. Took my dough out, allowed it to rest for a few minutes. And then I got my dough pizza crust on. I started a second batch for a freezer stock up. I'm going to put this in the oven and I'm going to allow it to roast just a little bit. And that's on 350 degrees. So while that's doing that, I make my own pizza sauce. And I just have an 8-ounce can of just tomato sauce. I've got me a little bowl here. And this way you know what's in your pizza. You can put in your pizza whenever you want to. This is your pizza. You know it doesn't have anything extra in it. You've made your own dough. And now you're making your own pizza sauce. So the only thing in it's whatever's in this can of preservatives. Because I don't have a garden, so I don't have access to tomatoes to make my own tomato sauces and tomato products. So I'm going to go ahead and just empty the 1 8-ounce can of sauce. And I always have me a handy dandy rag because I'm always getting messy. I'm going to add a little bit of garlic powder. And remember, this is your own sauce, so you can put in it what you want in it. I'm going to add just a little bit of Italian seasoning. Not much, just a little bit. And I like a sweet sauce, so I'm going to add just a little bit of granulated sugar. Maybe a tablespoon or or more. You do not have to add the sugar. I just like a sweet sauce. It helps take some of that tang out of the tomato sauce. Now I'm going to go ahead and just mix that up. This is my spaghetti sauce. Or, sorry, pizza sauce. I'm thinking spaghetti. And this will be my pizza sauce. So you can add to this at this time whatever you would like. You know, it's your pizza. You add whatever you think you would like on your pizza. Today I'm just going to be putting on some pepperoni. And some mozzarella cheese. And I'm just going to be making a basic pepperoni and cheese pan pizza. And this is, as you've seen, a very thick, nice crust. I'm going to get me a cooling rack. And I'll move that over here for now. Let me check my pizza dough. Oh, that looks great. Let me get some tongs. This pizza pan is really hard to get a hold of. So I just allowed that to raise a little bit in my oven. Now if you want to brown it a little bit more, you definitely can. So now I'm going to add my pizza sauce, my homemade pizza sauce. And I'd like a lot of sauce. And the 8-ounce can is absolutely perfect, I think, for a pizza this size, because if you like a lot of sauce. And you can see what a nice crust that has made. Nice and fluffy. I like a soft crust. I don't like a thin, hard crust. And this, to me, is just the perfect size. And of course, as big as it is, it's only, like I said, myself and my husband. So we'll eat half of this for dinner. And then I'll put the other half in my freezer for a future meal. So this is also helping me to restock my freezer. Since it's the first of the month and I'm doing my pantry and freezer restock and rotation. And I've been doing a lot of live streams this week, sharing some of the things that I'm doing. And I think the 8-ounce can is absolutely perfect amount. So I've got my pizza dough rised a little bit. I've got my pizza sauce on, homemade. Now I'm going to add some shredded mozzarella cheese. Trying not to burn myself. And you just put on as much as you want to put on. It's your pizza. You make it the way that you want to. I usually divide my cheese up in small bags like this in portions and then freeze it. And I know that's just about what I need for the next meal I'm preparing. Hi, good morning. Welcome to my kitchen this morning. Happy Friday, everybody. So that way, with me dividing it up like that in portions, I can just go in and take out a portion in my freezer, and I know I have enough there to make whatever meal I'm getting ready to prepare And if one small portion is not enough, I can always get 2 bags out. So when you're cooking for a small family like myself with 2, hi, good morning. Welcome to my kitchen, everyone. Happy Friday. We're making pizza. Okay, so we've got the homemade pizza crust, the homemade pizza sauce, and now I've got my mozzarella cheese. And I do the same thing with my pepperoni. I divide it into small portions because I don't have a large family. I don't want any waste. So when I get my pepperoni or whatever I have, I'll divide it into small portions. And I know when I'm going to make a pizza, it's just the right amount for my pizza. So I'm going to add my pepperoni. And this is very large slices of pepperoni. Now at this point you can add your onions, peppers, tomatoes, mushrooms, whatever you want. This is your pizza. So you make it the way that you want your pizza. And so I don't waste, I'm going to go ahead and add the last of that pepperoni. See if I can't move everything a little closer. You can never have enough pepperoni. I'm going to wash my hands, that's a little greasy. And if you hear that noise in the background and you just come in, I did make my own homemade pizza dough in my bread machine, and I have the second batch in there. And I went through my bread dough recipe, my handy dandy fancy little notebook recipe, and that's what you're hearing over here in the background. I'm making a second batch and I'll be freezing it to put in the freezer, so whenever I want another pizza in the future, all I have to do is go in and take out my pizza dough, let it thaw, and I'm ready to go. So I'm restocking my pantries and my freezer, and then doing a freezer rotation, pantry rotation, because it's the beginning of the month. And with a small family, this helps me keep everything rotated. Okay, so I've got all of that on there. And there's my homemade pizza. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in the oven, and I'll just keep checking on it. And when it's ready, we'll take it out and take a look at our homemade pizza. Okay, so now the next thing I'm going to work on is I'm going to make a breakfast casserole. So I'm going to move you now over here. I'm sorry, I'm limited on my space. So I'll move you over here where you can see. Now, to save time, and I'll turn this light off, I did go ahead and brown some sausage. And I just, 1 pound of sausage browned. And I'll move you back here where you can see, because this light is very bright. I always make in advance some potatoes, and I'll just take the whole potatoes and wash them. Put them in my crock pot, put them on heat and on high, and let them steam all day. Did you buy crust already made? I just made that homemade. That was a homemade crust. If you go back to the beginning of this live, you'll see my recipe. You'll see me taking it out of the bread machine and then putting it together on the pizza. So now for the breakfast casserole, I've got a casserole dish here ready. I've got 1 pound of ground sausage. I went ahead and done that ahead of time because we're on a live stream. And I like to stay on about 1.5 hours because I have a bad leg and ankle. So, and then these potatoes, I take the whole potatoes, wash them. I'll put them in my crock pot, put them on high, and let them cook all day, about 8 hours. And then when they cool, I'll cube them up, divide them out into quart bags, and freeze them. And then I have them in my freezer. I can just go in and take them out when I want to make a meal. Earlier this week, I used 1 quart for something that I prepared earlier this week in one of my lives. And this is my 2nd quart. Hi, good morning. So I'm going to go ahead and get my breakfast casserole put together now while my pizza is baking in the oven. And I have my 2nd batch of dough, pizza dough, going in my bread maker on the dough setting. So I'm going to be using 1 quart of my potatoes, 1 pound of the ground sausage. I had some onions that was extra, and I diced them up and put them in the freezer. That way, with a small family, I'm not wasting. They're diced up and put in the freezer, and I can just take them out, use them for meals, and nothing goes to waste. I'm going to be using some shredded cheddar cheese, and I'm going to be using 6 eggs, and then I'm going to be using a little bit of milk. So I'm going to go ahead and move some of this off to the side. Yeah, I want to put it together right here. See if I can move this, and I'm going to use a little bit of Pam because I am going to spray my casserole dish. So I'm just using a casserole dish. I'm going to move over to the sink and spray this so I don't make a mess. I'm just going to lightly spray my pan. Hopefully you can see that. It's kind of dark and dingy. I think we have another snowstorm coming. And now I'm going to take some of my ground sausage. I'm going to start with my potatoes. And I'm going to put my quart of potatoes in on the bottom. And that pan is lightly greased. No, baby. No. I do have puppies, so you're going to hear them in the background. And these have already been pre-cooked and then frozen, and I allowed them to thaw. So if I was just using fresh potatoes, then I would go ahead and put these in the oven and allow them to brown a little bit before I added anything else in my casserole. But I already have mine done ahead of time. So there's my quart of potatoes. I have the 1 pound of the ground sausage. So I'm going to add that. I'm using a slotted spoon so I don't get a whole lot of grease, but I do want a little bit of grease in there. And I'm just going to layer my sausage right on top of my potatoes. And I'm making a breakfast casserole. And I am making this for my freezer stock up. I had my last breakfast casserole yesterday, so I can restock my freezer with some more breakfast casserole. And that keeps my freezer rotated. And I like to do this monthly and start at the beginning of the month. And I usually have almost a week of batch cooking like this. But it saves so much time the rest of the month because I've prepared a lot of my meals. And all I have to do is go to my freezer and get out my portioned freezer meals for myself and my husband. And it's amazing. I absolutely love doing it this way. Okay, we'll move that out of my way. So now I have my lightly sprayed pan. I've got my 1 quart of the potatoes. I've got 1 pound of ground sausage. And I always use powdered milk for cooking and baking. If you've been watching me on my channel, then you've probably seen me do this multiple times. We go camping a lot, and with a family of 2, a lot of times it's really hard to try and use even a half gallon of milk before it goes bad. So I always keep pantry stable whole milk and 2%. Now this is the whole milk. Great idea. Yes, I absolutely love it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up 1 8-ounce cup of powdered milk. And that is 4 tablespoons of the powdered milk. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I always, when I put it in my jar, I'll put a little piece of tape on there and I'll tell myself that it's powdered milk and it's the whole milk. And then I need to add 4 tablespoons to 1 8-ounce of water. And that way I know what's in my jar and how to prepare it whenever I pull it out of the pantry. That's part of my pantry stock up. Now I'm just going to add my water. I'm just using bottled water. And I'm just going to stir that up. So if you just come in, we are making pizza. I have it in the oven. It's a homemade pizza with a homemade crust. And I made my own pizza sauce. And now we're putting together the breakfast casserole. And then once I get this together, I'm going to make a strawberry pie for hubby for dessert. Because hubby wants a strawberry pie for dessert. And this mixes up so nice. So, I'm going to set that to the side. I'm going to get me a bowl and a whisk. Nothing special here. Just the basics. And I have 6 eggs, and they're room temperature. And I'm going to put 6 eggs in my bowl. And yes, Granny's in her pajamas this morning. It's cool here in Ohio. I think we got another snowstorm coming. And it's early, and I just thought, well, I'm going to go ahead and just stay in my pajamas. It'll be just fine. So, Granny in her pajamas this morning, making pizza, breakfast casserole, and a strawberry pie. And the batch cooking does take a little bit of time, but when you have a small family, like I said, you can divide this up into portions and freeze it. And if you want a quick meal, quick breakfast, it's so easy. You know, just go in the freezer and take it out, let it thaw, and you are ready to go. And you don't have any waste. So I'm just going to whisk these eggs up real good. So the bread machine is right now, it takes 1.5 hours on the dough setting for the bread machine to make the dough using the dough program. So I went ahead and made that first batch and had it almost ready when I started my live. And that's what we made the homemade pizza dough out of. And got the pizza in the oven. And this is my second batch now. And when it gets done, I'll take it out, wrap it in plastic, put it in a storage bag, and put it in my freezer. And then I'll have another batch of dough, pizza dough made up. All I have to do is set it out, let it thaw, and I'll have another pizza. While my bread machine's dirty, I might as well make two batches. Okay, I've got my 6 eggs beaten up. I'm going to add some milk. This is 1 cup. Now, I'm not going to use the whole cup. Maybe about 1/4 of a cup or so. I use about 1/2. And I'm going to whisk that together. Now Now I've got my sprayed casserole pan. I've got 1 quart of my potatoes. I've got my browned sausage. And now I'm going to add those frozen onions right on top of my sausage. Now this is your casserole. You can put in it whatever you want to. You can put in bacon, you can put in mushrooms, you can put in whatever you want to. Because you're making your own breakfast casserole. This morning I'm just going to be using sausage, potatoes, onions, eggs, and cheese. So now I have all that in there. Now I'm going to go ahead and add my cheese. And like I said, I do portion my cheeses out because I have a small family. This way I'm not wasting. Indiana here, and it's snowing. Yeah, it's really dark here in Ohio, so I think we're going to get a little bit of a storm. So I thought, well, I'm going to go ahead and get started early this morning and get a few things done. I'm always work on my pantry restocking the first of the month. And I've done several live streams this week showing some of my pantry restock and freezer rotation. I believe the first one that I did, I was showing the homemade fettuccine noodles that I made using the Pasta and Beyond pasta maker. And then I showed how I laid them out on cookie sheets lined with aluminum foil, allowed them to dry, and then put them into, I did four pounds of fettuccine noodles. And once they set out, I think it was a little over 48 hours, depends on your humidity, it may take longer. But whenever you can pick them up and they snap and you know they're dry, I'll normally leave them out another 24 hours. And I got 2-gallon jars, so this is part of my pantry stock up for the month. My husband, I think, could eat noodles 7 days a week. He absolutely loves noodles. Okay, so now I've got my layer of cheese added. Now I'm going to add my eggs with a little bit of milk. And I'm just going to pour that right on top. Just kind of go back and forth. And just let that run right down through my cheese. And that's the eggs, 6 eggs, and about 1/2 cup of milk. And that will run down through your cheese. And now the only thing I'm going to add is I'm going to add a little bit of garlic powder. I love my garlic powder. And again, this is your casserole, so you can add whatever you want to. You're making this. So make this to your own taste. And then I'm going to add just a few parsley flakes for color and accent. So when my pizza gets done, my casserole will be ready to go into the oven. Hopefully you can see that okay. And this will be a freezer meal. I'll divide this into portions. And I will bake that on a cookie sheet lined with aluminum foil for probably about 40 minutes. I'll check it at 40 minutes and then I'll see if it needs to be in there a little longer. I'll pull out my pizza and let you see what we've got. It's not quite done yet. It smells absolutely delicious in here already. I'm using my tongs because this pan's a little bit hard to get a hold of. And you can see that my pizza where it's at this point. Now I'm going to allow it to bake a little bit longer. I'm going to turn it. And I'm going to set this for probably 15 minutes. Just so I don't forget, because I'm going to start now making the strawberry pie. I still have 45 minutes on this dough in the dough machine. And it has went through rise 1 and rise 2. And I'll open it very briefly so you can see the dough. And it's on the dough cycle, not on the bake cycle, and that is the bread machine, bread maker. That's my second batch of dough. Okay, so now I'm going to move. I need a little bit more room, so let me put a few things away here. I'm kind of limited on my space because we are in the middle of remodeling. Okay, I'm going to make now the strawberry pie. And I have some frozen strawberries that I've allowed to thaw. So I'm going to be using strawberries. I'm going to be using a little bit of cornstarch. I'm going to be using an 8-ounce packet of strawberry jello. And I'm going to be using a graham cracker crust to put my strawberry pie in. For your second batch of dough, do you go ahead and make the pizza for the freezer or the... A lot of times, because I'm limited on freezer space, if I know I'm going to be using it, I'll go ahead and form it out on a pizza pan and go ahead and just freeze it, wrap it in plastic, and then wrap it in aluminum foil and put it in my freezer. Already put out as the pizza made. I'll do the dough, the sauce, the pizza, the cheese, or the pepperoni, the cheese, and go ahead and freeze it. But if I don't have plans for it right away, I'll just freeze the dough ball. And what I'll do is, it comes out just a little bit warm, not hot, but a little bit warm on the dough cycle because it went through rise 1, 2, and 3. So I'll take it out and let it set to cool a little bit. Then I'll wrap it in plastic, the dough ball, and then I'll put it in a Ziploc baggie and then put it in the freezer so it's that way whenever I know I'm going to be making a pizza, I can just go in and pull it out in the morning if I know I'm going to have it in the afternoon or evening, and allow that dough to thaw. And when it thaws, then I'll go ahead and put it on the pizza pan, allow it to raise just like I did everything here with this pizza this morning. I'll basically go through the same process. But that gives me one extra pizza dough, or if I want to make a loaf of bread, because the dough that I'm using is a multi-use dough. I make my own sandwich bread, and I was showing earlier, it makes absolutely wonderful bread. It's so soft. It's amazing. And it makes a really pretty homemade sandwich bread. And it is absolutely so soft. Let me see if I can squish it without breaking it. Hopefully you can see how it's squishing. It is so soft and flexible. And what I'll do is I have I think it's called Our Daily Bread, and it's a bread slicer guide. It's got the little wooden tray on the bottom, little plastic on the side with your guides in it. And you just put your loaf of bread in and just put your knife in the guides, and that way your bread slices are even, because my hands don't work the way they used to. So all this helps me when I'm preparing my meals. And I know I'm not going to use all of this at once, so I'll divide half a loaf into a gallon freezer bag, and then the other half into the other gallon freezer bag. And I'll just put it in my freezer and freeze it, and then take it out as needed. So this dough that I gave the recipe for this morning makes amazing pizza dough, as you can see, pizza crust. It makes wonderful sandwich bread. Here is some of the homemade rolls. I had these out yesterday. I was doing the live stream I did yesterday was part 2 of canning, home canning the pork using the USDA guidelines. And then I made 2 meals yesterday showing a couple examples, meals of how to use your pork once you've canned it. And I made barbecued pulled pork sandwiches with with 2 pints. And then I had my crock pot set up and I made a pork stew. And then I had some of my rolls. So this is the same bread dough. So you can do the pizza crust, you can do homemade sandwich bread, you can do pizza rolls or dinner rolls. I make cinnamon rolls, and my husband loves cinnamon raisin bread. So it's a multi-purpose dough. And this is my handy dandy little recipe written on a piece of paper. And if you go back to the beginning, and I put on the top bread rolls, buns, cinnamon rolls, everything basically. And it's an absolutely wonderful dough. And if you don't have the bread machine, you can do this in the KitchenAid. It just won't go through ROS 1, 2, and 3. But I have the availability to use the bread machine, and it has the dough setting, so I just put everything in there and then let it run through the dough, and it'll do ROS 1, 2, and 3. And when it gets to 3, it's done. It'll beep and it'll remove the paddle. So before you do anything else, you just unplug it, take your dough out, remove the paddle, and I like to let it set for just a couple minutes because it's warm, it's not hot, and that makes it more flexible when you go to use it if you let it stand for maybe 5 minutes, and then go ahead and work it. And then what I'll do is just take it out and just kind of finger pat it just to get the air out from my sandwich bread, and I use my cast iron skillets. I just make sure, or cast iron bread pans, I just make sure that they're well greased, because if you're using cast iron, you want to over grease your pan. And I'll just take my bread loaf and I'll just set it out on my counter, and I just kind of take my fingers and just kind of move it a little bit just to get the air out. And then I do what I call take the head down and the shoulders in, and then I roll it toward me to make the loaf and bread loaf, and I just pinch the bottoms and fold the ends in and pinch, and then I just drop it into my cast iron bread pan, and I don't cover it. I just set it on the counter and allow it to raise one final time. It'll come up about this far up above my pans, and once it does that, I'll just put it in my oven at 350 degrees and bake it, and it comes out absolutely beautiful. And then the rolls, basically I do the same thing. I just take them out, put them in my cast iron baking pan, make sure it's well greased. I'll divide it into the rolls, put it in, allow it, set it on the counter, allow them to rise again, their final rise, and just put them in to bake. So this is an absolutely wonderful multi-purpose dough. Everything. You can do everything with it. Okay, so now let me get started on my strawberry pie. I always save all of my little jars, whether they're gravy jars or little cherry jars or pasta sauce jars, because I can always reuse them. And I have my little bit of milk, my half a cup, left over where I mix this up. So I don't waste, and I know I'm going to be making more meals. I'll just go ahead. This jar has been cleaned, sanitized, and I'll just put my extra milk in there. And next time I'm going to make something, I may only need a small amount of milk, but I'll start off with this. That way I'm rotating my refrigerators, my freezers, and my pantries. And I'm not wasting anything, because when you're baking or cooking for a small family, it's easy to waste, and you don't want to waste, especially with prices where they are. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in the refrigerator, and you can see what beautiful milk that makes. And this is the whole milk. This is not the 2%. Now, your whole milk does not last as long. Let me try this again. It doesn't last as long in your pantry because it's not as shelf stable as your 2%, because your whole milk has fat in it. It's usually about a year. So what I'll do is get the number 10 can, and I'll divide it up into my quart jars, and then I'll add some oxygen absorbers in it, and then I have the handheld portable jar sealer for mason jars, and I'll go ahead and seal it. So that way I've got it divided. I think it's about 4 quarts is what I'll get out of each can. And then I'm constantly rotating. I'll use these 4, and when I get down to my last one, I'll go ahead and get my next can out, because I know that it's time to restock my pantry. So that's part of my pantry rotation and how I keep my pantry stock rotated. Okay, so I've got my strawberries. I've got some cornstarch. I have 6 ounces of Jello, strawberry Jello mix. And that's not the sugar-free. And then I have 1 graham cracker pie crust. So I'm going to go ahead and put together now a strawberry pie. So let me go ahead and put this in the refrigerator. And that pizza smells absolutely wonderful. I'm going to go ahead and check it. I'm going to go ahead and pull the pizza. So the pizza is done. So I'm going to go ahead and move you over here. Oops. Getting used to this new stand. I apologize. I'm going to go ahead and toss these. Going to make me a little bit more room here. And we'll take that pizza out of the oven. I'm going to toss this sausage paper. And I'm going to put my Pam away because I am done with my Pam. And then I'm going to go ahead and toss my bags that I had. And I'm going to wipe this little space here. And I'm going to go ahead and bring that pizza out of the oven. Put me down a cooling rack. Oh, that smells so good. I hope you can see that. Got a beautiful crust. And we have a homemade pizza. Delicious. Smells like a restaurant. Now I'm going to go ahead and put my breakfast casserole in the oven. My timer was just about to go off, so I timed that just about perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and put my casserole in. And I'm going to set my timer for 30 minutes, and then I'll take a look at it. I'll probably go about 40 minutes or a little bit more. So now I'm going to go ahead and get ready to start on my strawberry pie. So I'm just going to move that to the side. And I'm just going to be using a stainless steel pot, a whisk, and my handy dandy little recipe card here. So this is a strawberry pie, and it says I need 1 graham cracker crust, 2 cups of frozen berries thawed. We have the frozen strawberries. 1 cup of sugar. Got my sugar ready. 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. 1½ cups of water. So we'll get my 2-cup measuring cup out. And it says 1 3-ounce box of strawberry jello. So I'll be using half of this 6-ounce because I don't have any more of my 3-ounce. So I'll use half of this, and then I'll just put the other half in a Ziploc baggie for my next strawberry pie. So that's all the ingredients. 1 graham cracker pie crust, graham cracker crumb or graham cracker crust, whatever you want to call that. 2 cups of frozen strawberries thawed, 1 cup of sugar, 2 tablespoons of cornstarch, 1½ cups of water, and 1 3-ounce box of strawberry jello. So that's all of our ingredients. Okay, so in my pot, I need 1 cup of sugar. So I'm going to start with my sugar. Let me get some more measuring cups out. And this is a very small thing of sugar, so I'm just going to kind of spoon that out into my 1 cup measuring cup. I'm just rotating my stock, and this was what was left over, so I'm going to go ahead and use up this before I open my new bag of sugar. And this is just regular granulated sugar. 1 cup, and I'm just using a spoon because this container is small. Now, if I would have needed more, I would have gotten my large container of sugar out. But this helps me keep everything rotated. Okay. 1 cup of sugar in my pot. Now I need 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. One and 2. And yes, that is a tablespoon. That's not a teaspoon. And now I need 1.5 cups of water. And I'm just using bottled water. Let me see. I don't think you can see what I'm doing there. Sorry. I'm just using 1.5 cups of bottled water. Now I'm going to bring this to a boil. So that's all I have in there. And I'll leave that light off for a little bit. Just so I get it stirred up and I'll show you here. Whenever you're putting your cornstarch, your sugar, your water together, you want to make sure that you whisk out all of those lumps. I'll do this and then I'll get my light turned back on. So there's everything stirred up. Now we're making the strawberry pie filling. So on about a medium heat, I don't want it too high. I want to bring this to a boil. I don't know if there's another angle I can get you at that's not as bright. So I'm just going to get this to a boil, and it should be more clear. This looks milky right now. It'll look more clear as it's coming to the boil. But when you're doing this, you want to make sure that you are right here watching this. You do not want this to scorch. So I'm going to go ahead and get my strawberry jello open. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of eyeball this. So whenever I open it, I'll just kind of put my fingers and pinch about half of that pack, because this is 6 ounces and I only need about half of that pack. So I'll just eyeball that. It'll be a guesstimation. Do you have any questions at this point? So far we've got the homemade pizza, the pan pizza, pepperoni pizza made, using the homemade pizza crust, using the dough, the bread machine to make the dough. We've got a breakfast casserole put together, and that is potatoes, brown sausage, a few frozen diced onions, a little bit of garlic powder, some shredded cheddar cheese, and then my 6 eggs. I let them get to room temperature, about a half a cup of whole milk, and then I put my eggs and milk together and whisk them up, and then I just poured that over top of my cheese that's on the top of my breakfast casserole, and then I just added just a little bit of parsley flakes for color. So as this is cooking, I want this to come to a boil. And you'll see it clear, it'll get more clear. Right now it is milky. It has like a milky color. It'll become more clear. And it'll begin to thicken. Now this is your strawberry center. And I'll be putting that in my graham cracker pie crust. And that will be the 2 cups of the frozen, thawed strawberries. So this is the strawberry pie for dessert. I asked my husband what he wanted for dinner. He said, how about a homemade pizza and a strawberry pie for dessert? So I thought I'd bring you along this morning while I'm doing this. And I went ahead and got my first batch of dough almost done at the beginning of my live stream. If you go back, you can see that. And then when I removed it, I let it set for a few minutes. And while I was doing that, since I already had my bread machine out, I went ahead and started the second batch using my recipe that I used for the first batch. So you could see my recipe. And I went ahead and started the second batch. It takes an hour and a half. One of my favorite pies. Oh, strawberry pie. My husband absolutely loves his desserts. He might be just a wee bit spoiled. Just a little bit. But he loves his desserts. And he loves homemade anything. So I'm just going to kind of talk to you. It's hard for me to read the comments, but I'll try and get them all. So, happy Friday, everybody. We made it through another week. And yes, Granny's in her pajamas. This cold weather's really got my foot and leg. It's bothering me this morning. Plus, I've been doing some live streams this week. I've done several. Now my canning... pressure canning with my new electric pressure canning, 2 live streams, canning pork with the new Nesco Smart electric canner. I cut that into 2 videos, part 1 and part 2. But I have an injured leg and foot, and it's I try to stay up on it for about an hour to an hour and a half, and that's pretty well pushing it. So we're almost done here. We've got the pizza done. Getting ready to get the strawberry pie done. You can see I'm steaming. And once I get the pie done, I'll put it in the refrigerator and allow it to set up. And it'll be there for my dessert tonight for dinner. So my husband will have his homemade pepperoni pizza, and he'll have his strawberry pie. And since I'm doing my restocking, I went ahead and made that second batch of dough. If I want to make it pizza, I can use it for pizza, or if I'm running low on my bread, I can let it thaw and turn it into a loaf of bread. Or if I need some dinner rolls, I can turn it into dinner rolls once it comes out and thaws, or I can make some cinnamon rolls. So I'll have that extra dough ball in my freezer for my freezer stock up for a future meal. And I love that dough because it's a multi-purpose dough. I make sandwich bread, cinnamon raisin bread, cinnamon rolls, dinner rolls, pizza crust. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. And it's simple and easy. Now this is starting to thicken. And the milkiness now is starting to slowly go away. It's getting more clear. It's not as milky as it was. It's more clear. And this is hot. So be careful if you're doing this. It is hot. I pre-measured my strawberries. It's 2 cups, and they were frozen, and I allowed them to thaw. Before that gets too much closer, I'm going to go ahead and cut open my Jello bag. And you really have to stay right with this. Do you have to boil the mixture for a certain amount of time? What I do is I let it come to a good boil, And you'll notice that it's not as creamy looking, it's not as milky looking, it's more clear. And you'll feel a difference in the thickness, where the cornstarch now has everything's blending together, and this is giving you a thickness. So I basically just allow it to come to a boil, which it's doing now, but I don't want it to boil too long. I want to check my thickness. You can see, hopefully, with that dripping off of my spoon, it's starting to get thicker. Hopefully, if I can get a little bit closer, you can see how it's thickening up. Because you want like that gel in your strawberry pie. This is what gives you that gel in your strawberry pie that holds everything together in your strawberry pie center. So this is your pie center. And it is boiling, so I'm going to probably set my timer for about 2 minutes. And I'm going to make sure that I'm stirring. If it starts to get too thick, I'll just go ahead and turn my timer off. And this is just about where I want it. I wish I don't know if you can see that or not. This light is so bright. Hopefully you can see that. It is boiling. And you can see how thick it's getting. And that's probably right there about what I want, so I'm going to just, oops, I turned my oven off. Oh, heavens, wrong button. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and turn that off, and I'm going to show you the thickness with the spoon. Okay, you can see this thickness. It's like a heavy, syrupy thickness. Now once this sets in the refrigerator with your strawberries, it's going to thicken even more. So I've got that boiled, got my burner off. So now I need to add my Jell-O. And what I'm going to do is, I know that that's right there. I'm going to use half of this pack because I only need 3 ounces. So I'm going to just try and add 3 ounces, just folding that over. Add just a little bit more, just for good measure. And then that's going to leave me another 3 ounces. So I'm just eyeballing that because this is a 6 ounce. It's going to make 2 batches. Now I'm going to stir in my Jell-O. Which will give you your beautiful red color. And now I'm going to add in my strawberries. Now these I'm not draining them. They were frozen. I let them thaw. This is 2 cups of strawberries. And I'm just going to add those right in there. And now I'm going to go to a different spoon because I don't want to smash up my strawberries. So I'm just going to stir my strawberries in. Hopefully you can see that okay. Now I'm going to let this set for just a couple minutes. And you can see how nice and thick that is. Now that's my oven kicking back on. So I'm going to let that set for just a few minutes. And I'm going to get my pie crust ready. So I'm going to move this. I'm just going to fold this over and set this aside. And I'll be putting that in a Ziploc baggie. That'll be my next strawberry pie. That'll be my 3 ounces. So I'm going to set that off to the side. Clear off my workspace. And I'm using just my handy dandy little recipe. So this says bring it to a boil. It should be clear. Add the jello and stir in the strawberries. So that's what we did. And then it says to put it in your pie crust and set it in the refrigerator until it sets. Serve it plain or with whipped cream. So let me get my pie crust open. And this is a 6-ounce pie crust, graham cracker crust. Hopefully you can see that okay. Now this will also make a larger pie. Depends on how thick you want your pie crust. I'm just going to go ahead and get that off of there. And that's my cover. So I'm going to go ahead and just wipe that. Where it had that sticky on it. And then I'm going to rinse it real good. This is really quick, it's easy, and it's absolutely delicious. Now I'm just going to take a paper towel and just dry my plastic lid for my pie cover. Because I didn't have that prepared ahead of time. So I just wiped it, rinsed it, and now I'm just towel drying, paper towel. And this will be my cover to put over my pie crust in the refrigerator. Okay, so now I've let this set for a few minutes. Now I'm going to add all of my strawberries into my pie crust. And I'll just kind of scoop this so you can see how nice and thick this is. This is absolutely delicious. It's a quick, easy dessert. And if I have extra, that's just absolutely fine. I'm sure hubby will not mind. Let me go ahead and turn that around a little bit. My counter, as you can see, is not perfectly even. Try and get some more strawberries in there. I want to make sure it's really full. And this extra pie filling that I have, the strawberry sauce that I have, I'm going to turn that into strawberry bananas. And I'm going to do that in a different little container. Okay, I think I can. Alright, so now I've got me a nice, full strawberry pie. So there is my strawberry pie. And of course I'm making a mess here, as usual. But it will be just fine. I've got this cutting board under here, and my counter's not exactly perfectly flat, but it will be all right. But you can see how nice and thick that is. I'm going to add my lid. And I'm just going to pinch it down. Oh, what a yummy, yummy pie. Now I'm going to set this in the refrigerator covered and allow it to completely set up for dinner. And that will be dessert. That's an edible mess. All good. Yes, absolutely. So now I'm going to take off that little bit of extra. And I'll show you what I'm going to do with that. Just a little bit of extra that I have there. Let me pull out a little container. Let's see, what size do I need? Don't want something real big. Let me just use one of my Cool Whip, because I don't think I have another small container about the size. So I'm just going to use my little Cool Whip dish that's been washed and it's clean. Get up a little bit of that sticky. And then I'm going to cut up a banana. This way I'm not wasting anything. Peel a banana. Get a little knife. And I'm just going to slice those little bananas up. I'm just using one banana because I don't have a whole lot of leftover strawberry jello filling. So there's my one banana. Now I'm just going to take that leftover and I'm going to pour it right in on my bananas. And there's a couple little strawberries in there, just for goodness. For all that goodness taste. And then I'm going to stir up my strawberries and bananas. You can see I've got a couple strawberries in there. And then I'm just going to put my lid on. And I'm going to put this in the refrigerator, just like I did my strawberry pie. And I'll let this set up, and then that will be another side dessert. And I put it in a used, clean, Cool Whip container with a lid on it. And I'm just going to put that in the refrigerator. So that will give me two. Sorry, I have puppies. I'm sure you hear them in the background there. Let me get a... No, babies. No. I think they hear one of my neighbors, so I apologize. We're real life here, and they're just puppies being puppies. And I'm going to get me my little handy-dandy trash bag ready. So, I hope that wasn't too awful boring. I've been on here now almost 2 hours, so it's a little longer than I like to be on here. I will go ahead and set my dishes in my sink and go ahead and get some water in them, rinse them to make it easier for cleaning. Of course, I do have the new dishwasher. We did get that part of the kitchen done. I have the new range top, and the new dishwasher, refrigerator, and sink, and part of the kitchen remodel, but the other part is still on hold. What kind of puppies? They're Maltese. One will be 2 in July, and one will be 1 in, I think, April. I have them on one of my thumbnails for this week, I believe, hanging out with my fur babies. And that's my 2 Maltese. Okay, and that was perfect. This dough finished, so I'm going to unplug it. It beeped. I'm going to move you back over here. Here's our pizza. I'm going to go ahead and move some of my trash out of the way. And there is our amazing pizza for dinner. Absolutely delicious. Just look at that crust. Beautiful. I'm going to set that over here. I've unplugged my dough machine, my bread machine. And this is how the dough will come out. It's not baked. It's just on the dough cycle. So now I'm just going to go in and remove this out of my pan. And I'm going to make sure I don't have any dough, extra dough stuck on my paddle. And while this is dirty, I may go ahead and make one more batch of dough after I go offline. So that way I don't have to get my machine back out and make a mess and then clean it back up. So I'm going to go ahead and put the pan off to the side. And this is the amazing pizza crust dough that we used for that pizza. So that worked out just perfect. You can see what a nice dough that makes. And it makes amazing. It's an all-purpose dough. I do my breads, like I said, all my breads. I do my dinner rolls. My pizza dough, you can use it for cinnamon rolls, anything. And it's a very simple, easy recipe. I did say the recipe, but I'll put it in my description when I'm done with this live stream. But you can see how nice and flexible that is. It's easy to work. And whenever I'm making my bread dough, I don't roll out my dough. I would just bring it out like this. Just take my fingers and just pat some of my air out of it. And I just kind of make a little bit of a rectangle, not a big one, but a little bit. And then what I would do, as I call it, folding my head in. So I bring my head down. I pull out on my shoulders and fold in. And then I'm just going to roll this toward me to make a loaf. And then I'm going to pinch my ends. Make sure that everything's rolled under and pinched. And don't be afraid to pat it. It's dough. You're not going to hurt it. And then I would take that. It's already went through rise 1, rise 2, and rise 3. Then I would take that and put that directly into my heavily greased cast iron bread pan. I just pick it up and flop it down in. Don't be gentle with it. You're not going to hurt it. And then I would just set it in my bread pan, set it over on my counter. I don't even cover it. I allow it to rise, and it'll rise up above your pan. And once it gets above your pan, I have my oven preheated to 350 degrees, and I will take my bread and just bake my bread, and I have wonderful bread. So there's so many uses you can get with this one dough, and you've seen what beautiful bread that it makes. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm just going to make a dough ball, and it's just like a lukewarm whenever you first take it out of the bread machine. So I wanted it to cool down a little bit. So what I'm going to do, so I'm going to get some plastic wrap. And while my bread machine's out, I'll probably go ahead and make another batch of dough. And then I'll just put my dough ball on my plastic. My hands just don't work like they used to. I apologize, but I try. Just takes me a little longer to get things done. And then I'll just cover it in my plastic. And I want to cover it kind of tight. Not real tight, but just, you know, good and snug. So cover it in my plastic. And again, you don't have to be gentle with that. It's not going to hurt anything. See if I have it open. And then I'm going to get me out a freezer bag. And I'm just going to put my dough wrapped in plastic in a 1-quart freezer bag. Try and get as much of the air out of my bag as I can. And then I'll put this in the freezer. And I know that that's my dough ball. And I don't have to label this because I use this same dough, whether it's for pizza, crust, or bread, or whatever it may be that I need for the day. And as you can see, that's a large dough ball, a lot of dough. It's a big dough ball. It's not a small dough ball. So that's what I'm doing today. Now I'm going to let that here for just a few minutes, not very long because I don't want it to rise. But it's a little bit warm. I just want to make sure that it's not real hot. And I'm going to go ahead and put this in my freezer. And that's part of my freezer stock up, monthly stock up. So if I want a loaf of bread, all I got to do is go in and get one of my quart bags of dough, bring it out, let it thaw. When it thaws, shape it, put it in whatever container I want to put it in, bread pan or make cinnamon rolls or whatever I'm going to be doing with it. And that makes it very simple and very quick and easy, especially if you have a small family and it's just myself and my husband. So this way I know there's no waste. And that's very cool now. It's not hot. So I'm going to go ahead and just place this in my freezer. And I have restocked some more of my freezer. And I've done some freezer rotation. So anyway, that's all I have this morning. Oh, let me check my casserole. It may be close. It may be close. Make sure that's not hot. And here we'll take a look at the breakfast casserole. It's looking absolutely delicious. And here is the breakfast casserole. And I'll divide that up into some meals. I'm going to leave that in, I'm going to say about another 10 minutes. So let me set my timer. And I'll take that out here in about 10 minutes. And again, that is absolutely looking delicious. And that is potatoes, sausage, ground sausage, a little bit of frozen diced onions, 6 eggs, a half a cup of milk, the eggs and milk whisked together, a small, maybe about a handful and a half, cup and a half of shredded cheddar cheese, a little bit of garlic powder, and just a little bit of parsley on top. And then I'll divide that up into portions and put it in freezer-safe containers for future meals. So that's part of my pantry and freezer stock up and rotation. So I'm going to go ahead and hop off of here. I have some dishes to get in the sink. And here you can see, before I clean this, you can see that nice thick strawberry syrup, how it's coming off of there, how nice the pie filling is going to set up. It'll be a nice strawberry pie. So I'm going to hop off of here and get some of these dishes and some water. And then I'm going to go ahead and sit down and take a break for a little bit. Then I'll come in and get everything ran through the dishwasher and get everything cleaned up. So I've been on here 2 hours. I'm a half an hour over my normal. My leg and foot is really starting to bother me. But if you go back to the beginning, we made the homemade pizza dough in the bread maker. We put the pizza together, the pepperoni pizza, which turned out absolutely amazing. Using homemade dough, using homemade pizza sauce, and putting it together and getting it into the oven. And then we made the breakfast casserole, and then I made the strawberry pie, and then put a second batch of dough through the bread machine on the dough setting, and I just put that second ball of dough in the freezer for future use, whether it be for bread rolls or whatever, because this again is a multi-purpose dough. I use it for everything. And then, since this is already out today, I'll probably go ahead and run 1 or 2 more batches of my dough through, because I was completely out of my dough. And then I'll get it in my freezer, and that'll be some more of my freezer stock up this month. So anyway, I want to thank everyone for stopping in. I want to thank you for your kindness and your patience. You're always so kind and patient, and I appreciate that so much. I hope this will encourage you to come in your kitchen and try new things. Try making your own bread, your own bread doughs. You do not have to have a bread maker. You can use a KitchenAid. You can mix it up by hand. You can use one of these handy dandy little dough mixers. But my hands just don't work like they used to. So this I already have the bread machine. It already has the dough setting, so it just saves me some time, and it's easier for my old hands. So anyway, I want to thank everybody for stopping in. I'm just a small channel. If you like this kind of live streams, please like and subscribe. That would be wonderful. And I'm going to go ahead and hop off of here. I'm going to heat up my coffee. I'm going to go sit down. I'm going to rinse off my dishes, get them in some water. I'm going to go sit down, put my feet up, and enjoy some coffee. So enjoy the rest of your Friday. Have an absolutely wonderful day. And until next time, bye-bye. And as always, please be kind. Be kind to one another. We really need to see a lot more of that. We really do. Have fun in your kitchen. Try new things. You're never too young or too old to learn new things, and just experiment and enjoy, but make sure that you do it safely. And you follow USDA food guidelines if you're canning or preserving, and that make sure that your cook space, your countertops, whatever you may be doing, make sure everything's sanitized, and and you're doing everything as safe as you can to keep yourself and your family healthy. So until next time, bye bye everyone. Enjoy your Friday. We made it. We made it through the week. Today's the last day. So this leg's about ready to give out on me. I'm going to go ahead and hop off of here. Bye bye everyone. Again, thank you for stopping in, and I will see you the next time. Bye. Enjoy the rest of your Friday. Bye everyone.